What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review, also the final episode review of Mobile Suit Gundam GQuuuuuX. This is episode 12, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
It's hard for me to really comprehend like what like whoever idea this was to make it this show as short as it was.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, obviously we're both gonna get into a tangent here.
yeah.
Um,
The whole time I was
but
watching
I
this
don't
episode, I
understand.
was honestly just waiting for it to be
I
over.
don't I don't understand why no one could approve at least the second core for this show,
Yeah,
because it would have benefited
I,
a lot more from this. But as a result, because of how short this was, we've had so many different things like rushed to such a ridiculous degree. There's like practically no development, little to no development for much of the main characters, particularly Machu and Neon. Um, it's just the whole resolution made little to no sense, and it just left us with more questions than answers.
yeah.
Even by the
I,
end.
I mean, my
Uh,
theory is just that based on the way the series has played out, it feels like that whoever is above the people working on this series basically told them, like, in the middle of production, you need to finish this like in this amount of episodes, and they were originally planning for it to be like maybe a full season, and they had to like rush to finish it. Like, that's the only thing that really makes sense to me, based on how especially these last two episodes played out. It's just it feels like they, like, I've seen rush series before, but this is up there in terms of how rushed everything is, because nothing really makes any sense, especially in the final climax of the series. Like, and it really feels like there was supposed to be something there, like, in between all of this just complete nonsense that happens in the last few episodes, to really sort of, like, especially like the relationship with Neon and Batu. Like, it felt like that really needed to be way further developed than it was in the series, for it to really be as impactful as they were trying to make it out to be in the final episode. Especially the ad, well, both of them liking Shuji also really needed to be like further developed before they got to this point at the end of the series where they're both like completely obsessed with Shuji, because it doesn't really make sense as to why they're just so, like, both of them are like, it really seems like that's all they care about is Shuji.
so, um, so, so we pick up after the last episode, in which the final scene of that last episode showed us the original RX
Oh,
78.
yeah. So this is something
But
else too.
instead,
Yeah, when they
okay,
showed
so
this, your first inclination might be like, okay, well, this is going to be Amuro, right? Well, prepare to be disappointed, because he's, unfortunately, like, I'm just going to go ahead and spoil it. He's not in this series at all. And I mean, like, it doesn't make any sense as to why, considering he is Char's nemesis, but he's just not in the series.
yeah, and so the person piloting this suit is Shuji, and of course we sort of get. I can't really say as much of an answer, but it's just like it's it's just a ridiculous explanation of why this whole multiverse theory exists in the show. Um, Basically, what happened is, of course, they do a recreation or remake the fight scene between Char and Amuro. Of course, we only see Char in those scenes. Like, Amuro makes no appearance, like,
Conveniently.
whatsoever, even in the, yeah, conveniently, with in those remake scenes. And of course, I do think that was like one of the better parts of this episode, of having them remaking that scene, but it ends much differently than how the original scene ends. With which was Lala, who originally died in that scene or disappeared or whatnot. It ends up being Char getting killed in that fight, which causes Lala to pretty much lose her mind and create these alternate universes in which she tries to save Char, but every attempt she's made, like, ends ends in failure. And Shuji's reasoning as to why he wants to kill this version of Lala is so he can, I guess, release her from her pain from losing Char over and over and over again. Now,
Hmm. My
I mean,
the main
okay,
question
and
here is, who the hell is Shuji and why does he care? Because we only got a really basic explanation in like the last episode, and all of it really amounts to is that Shuji was some guy that was involved, I guess, in this uh, like alternate version of the events of the 1 Year War, and now he's important for some reason. Uh, and that's pretty much it. And it's just like they really spend no time really telling us who he is, and why we should care.
yeah, and it's the same thing with Char of why he wants to kill this version of Lala. I mean, before he can do so, he ends up, yeah, he ends up, um, fighting Charlie a Bull, out of like literally out of nowhere, um, in which, well, actually,
Well,
before
isn't the whole
that,
time like Charlie is
um,
fighting? I forget that guy's name. That yeah,
Xavier.
yeah. Like they're the whole episode they're like fighting each other, but they're really not fighting so much as like having a conversation, I guess, within the Kira Kira, which is kind of also what happens with Machu, Nyan, and Shuji, is that would like in of course as they're fighting they're also like having these conversations, which would happen in the original series between new types, but they really go overboard with it here.
Yeah, and of course, before that, as I mentioned before that fight between Charlie and Char, Char ends up killing Cassilia.
Uh,
Just basically just targets the main bridge of her ship and then just immediately kills
yeah,
her. That's it.
it's I just I don't know. Like this scene is where I was wondering to myself, like, are they just like trying to troll us with this? Like I'm just so confused as to why it's an alternate timeline, but she still dies the exact same way that she did in the original series. But of course, in this episode they really go out of their way to have it so that Char gets to kind of live, I guess, a happy, peaceful life as opposed to what happens with him in the original timeline. But then Cassilia just dies the same way. So I just thought that was funny. She just gets killed the exact same
Uh,
way.
yeah, and of course, we do get you could say it's a climactic fight scene between uh, the RX-78 and the GQuuuuuX and the G
I
Thread.
don't even know where to begin
Uh,
with this fight with the with the RX-78 and Machu and Yan.
uh, I mean, out of nowhere, like Machu convinces Neon to fight alongside her, despite the fact that they're both fighting Suji. Um, it's just kind of like a rushed, I don't know, just a rushed partnership just to go up against Shuji for just because he wants to kill Lala. I mean, the fight, you know, it's interesting at first, but then it gets even more ridiculous once Shuji
I,
somehow uses his ability to
I just
make.
thought of something too. Like, why should Nyan care about Lala? Like, does she even? I don't think she knows who Lala is. Does she?
No, she never did.
Yeah.
She never did. Um, I mean, all she knows is Lala was being used as a catalyst for the Magneto
Yeah.
weapon, but that's about it. She never interacted with her, and nor even
I
nor
I
did
mean,
she even find out who
I
she
can
was.
kind of understand Machu, even though that's a little bit of a stretch too. Even though considering she just kind of knew Lala for a very short amount of time, but Nyan didn't know her at all. So
No, I mean, well, Maju didn't really know this version of
yeah.
Lala. I mean, she knows the Lala from, when she was on Earth for just that one
Mhm.
episode. But then, yeah, and then of course the fight goes into the weird territory in which somehow Shuji uh, makes the RX-78 grow to kaiju proportions, and then
Okay, so So when this happens, like it's really like I don't know what this is supposed to be. Like they refer to it as both a hologram and a dummy, of which it could be neither. Um, it can't be a hologram because a hologram would not be able to like physically interact with any other objects, considering it's just a projection. A dummy, like which we see in other Gundam series, is just that. It's a dummy, and it can easily just be destroyed. It's literally just meant as a distraction. So this can't be a dummy because it's able to it's able to like to fight the other Gundams, and it's not a dummy. It's not their hologram nor a dummy. So I don't know why they refer to it as that.
So, yeah, and of course, it ends up well. This version, Shuji, successfully destroys the G Fred, but of course, Neon manages to eject on time, and then of course the fight ends in which Machu decapitates the giant Gundam's head off, and then we get this final conversation between Shuji and Machu about with them, I guess, both sharing their feelings, and then they both share a kiss out of nowhere.
Yeah, the problem with this is that, like, when we see Shuji earlier in the series, he doesn't really seem to give Machu the time of day, and it's not really clear as to how he feels about her, even though it's, of course, very clear how both Nyan and Machu feel about him, but we don't really know if he even reciprocates those feelings, and it's not until this scene where I guess he does, and we don't really even know why, because there's of course been no time for them to develop into any sort of not even just a romantic relationship. They really just came off more as acquaintances, if anything, and we're supposed to believe that they are romantically interested in each other now, even though we never got to really even get to that point. It just doesn't make sense. And I mean, we know that, of course, Nyan also kind of feels that way about Shuji, and I guess he doesn't feel that way about her. I don't know.
It's, I mean, they never give us a time of day to even allow Shuji to even talk to Nyan.
Yeah. The problem is it's just because we've had no time for the characters to really have any sort of significant, like, scenes with each other that develop their relationship or develop their characters in any meaningful way. So this just completely comes out of nowhere. Well, at least for Shuji, not for Machu, but at least for Shuji it does.
Yeah. So at the end, the Lala inside the Rose of Sharon ends up awakening. Thanks Machu for what she's done, and then releases a Zeknova that envelops her, Shuji, and they end up disappearing off to maybe some unknown universe, which we don't know about.
Right.
And then
also, we should mention this too before we go into this. Artesia shows up again, and it's like almost like a throwaway scene. Like they acknowledge that she's there, and it's important to mention this because she showed up at the beginning of the series. We didn't see her again. She's never referenced again. She's referenced again here. And I guess she's still alive. I assume that she either disappeared with Char at the beginning of the series or was killed in that explosion. But she, I guess, somehow is still alive in this timeline. And I mention this because they even say that maybe Artesia will be the new. I think Cecilia has mentioned something about Artesia being the new like Zeon leader, which she ends up being the new leader of Zeon. And I mean that's one of the ending scenes, because it literally comes out of nowhere. By the way, because this is the only other time she showed up in this series.
Yeah, I mean you would have to imagine that the Earth Federation would take advantage of the whole chaos.
Yeah.
With what happened between Giran and Cassilia.
Yeah, because some of the most powerful Zeon leaders are now dead. Yeah, I mean, well, that's another thing too. What happened with this universe's equivalent of the Titans? Like, because they showed up and they did nothing, and they haven't done anything ever since they were introduced that one time. They're just not a thing in this series now. Like they were completely forgotten about. Like they were written out of the show. Why didn't they? They never did anything, except that one attack.
No,
That one
I mean,
time they used the Psycho Gundam, and that's it. And that's all they did. Um, oh,
yeah, and then they were immediately killed off by Charles.
yeah,
That's um uh honestly, I don't know. And then of course shortly afterwards, Char escapes the battle. He goes back to Earth and meets this version of Lala. Um well, his universe version of Lala, and they end up we don't know what happened afterwards. And then
I feel like
we
I
do get
almost feel like the reason this whole series was created was to just give almost just to give like Char like a happy ending that he didn't get in the main timeline.
I don't know. I don't feel like it's earned.
It's
To
not
be
like it
honest,
doesn't make any sense. Uh, I mean, like well, I guess I mean, of course, Amuro just conveniently is written out because I mean, he would all have to be like a factor, but I guess he's not. And I guess because he doesn't exist, like it all also because of that, Char gets his
how
happy ending.
maybe that's the point. Maybe Amuro does not 100% exist in this
I
timeline
guess
at
not.
all. Maybe that's like probably not, because we do know that Lala is the one who created these alternate timelines.
Well,
And
actually, no.
uh
Why? Well, if so, I mean, she would probably want to also because, as we know from the original series, there was a love triangle. Like she was in love with both Char and Amuro, so Amuro would definitely
yeah.
exist. If that were the case, if she created these universes, she wasn't just in love with Char. So yeah, that's kind of a plot hole too, because Amuro would probably have to exist, but he doesn't. Um, but anyways, of course, it really felt like they just like after the battle was over, they're just like, oh, okay, well, I guess like Char's like, okay, I'm gonna leave now, and then they just quickly sort of go over, I guess, what happens with the Zeon government, which Artesia takes over. At this point, I gave up trying to make sense of anything, and then we get a brief scene with the crew from the beginning of the series, the clan battle
The
crew.
clan battle
Yeah,
crew.
and now I guess they're going to go and scavenge for leftover parts from the Zek Nova. And that's what they're going to do. I guess they also just were not important in the series either. They were in the beginning of the series, and then they didn't do anything after that. And
Yeah. And
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and then of course we get the final scene between Machu and Yan. Before this, like Machu does send a text message to her mother, telling her she's all right, but she still, for whatever reasons, she still wanted criminal on Site 6 after what happened. Uh, you know, after that chaos, with the clan battle and all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
guess I
like.
guess
I
Artesia is
don't.
not going to pardon
Yeah.
them.
No. Um, and then of course, I mean, of course, Artesia. I don't think Artesia even knows who they are.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
the
they never
problem. We don't even know
interacted
what
with each other.
Artesia knows and doesn't know. I mean, apparently she was. I guess she
Yeah.
was there when the battle happened, but we don't know how much she saw or what she knows about it.
Yeah. So both, Machu and Neon, both on a beach on Earth, and Machu, of course, like is supposedly told by the Gundam that she's confident and hopeful that they'll both be able to see Shuji again someday. Um, Whether or not if this is like the same Shuji that they interacted with, or maybe it's the Shuji of this universe, it's not clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where the series ends at that, right then and there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, it's hard for me to grasp like what even is the point of the show at this point. It's I mean, they promoted the heck out of this. They released a movie of, which is a combination of the first 3 episodes, and then they finally released this, and then they just gave us one of the shortest Gundam series like in the history of the show. Actually of the franchise, actually.
Yeah. And like I said, I get the feeling is it wasn't intended to be that short, especially because of how rushed the really the middle of the series is, and then the everything up to the finale, the climax of the series. Um,
I can't imagine that Hideki Anno's happy with the whole circumstance of how he got dragged
well,
into doing this.
well, I mean, especially
Um,
considering Otto is is known to have been very much disillusioned by the anime industry and like a lot of what happens in it. It's a lot of that was resulted in Evangelion, because he was kind of fed up with the way, like I guess the production schedule or what it did different things within the anime industry. So yeah, I'd imagine he's probably not too happy if at least if he was intending for this to actually be longer. But yeah, it definitely feels like Ano. It feels like the most involvement he had in this series was to maybe contribute certain ideas, like the maybe the multiple universe thing was his idea. It seems like something Ano would do. And then also like referencing the original Gundam was might have been his idea as well, but it's hard to say because a lot of it just does not feel like something Ano would that Ano did. I mean, a lot of it just is feels derivative of maybe other things that he had worked on, like Evangelion is the most obvious, with the Gundams looking more like Evas than Gundams. Um,
I mean, it's too soon to know, like, what the real answers are at this
yeah,
point, because unless we get like an actual explanation as to what happened with the show. I mean, we're not going to get, as of right now, we're not going to get the answers at this
yeah.
point. Is unless someone like maybe Ano or maybe somebody else who worked on the show maybe would either clarify what exactly happened with this show.
Yeah, I would like to
Um,
know, what exactly was going on behind the scenes, because to me it seems like there were definitely production issues with this, um, because that's the only explanation that makes any sense. Um, but
yeah, this could have been a better show in my opinion. It had this been a little bit
yeah,
longer, and had they at least expanded on certain plot points a little bit better, because what they were putting out there for this season, it's too it's too brief for them to just suddenly just do it in like 12 episodes, like you know like not not just just the characters themselves, but the entire plot of like what's going on with the universe. Why are we getting why are we in an alternate version of the original universe series? What what's going on with the whole multiverse thing? I mean, that would have been it would have done a lot better had it been a little bit longer, but for whatever reason they just decided to just end it off there with such a haphazard explanation as to why that needed to exist in the first
the
place.
the main problem with the series is, of course, like you mentioned, it definitely needed to be longer. Um, it needed to be longer because we needed to have a lot more time with the world building of this particular universe, or this particular timeline of the Universal Century. We needed more world building with what was going on with the Xeon government, what was going on, especially with the Earth Federation government, because we really don't know, especially what's going on with them. And they introduced this faction that's basically the Titans, and it kind of got dropped. It sort of gotten forgot about. I mean, they do one thing in the series, and then they just kind of got forgotten. That needed more time spent on it. We needed the other thing that I think is also just as important, if not more so, is we needed to have a lot more development with both Nyan, Machu, and Shuji. They since they seem to be the main like core of what's going on with the series. They really, it's everything about them is completely unearned. They needed to have more time developing Yan and Machu as to be believable as friends, and especially Machu, Shuji, and Yan. This like whole love triangle between them needed just as much time for it to be believable in any way. Which it's just not, because there's no time spent on any of it. So that's really the main the main issue. The other issues, of course, being that the mechs are, of course, very, like I mentioned before, just derivative of Evangelion. They don't really feel like Gundam mechs, and also Gundam is more of like a real, what that is referred to as a realistic robot genre of mecha, which is more, a little bit more grounded. I can't say that this was at all grounded in any way. Now, of course, we've had other series in Gundam that haven't been like that, like G Fighter, for instance. But you kind of know what G Fighter is going into it, that it's not going to be like that. This series, however, being set in the Universal Century timeline, and you kind of are under the assumption it's at least going to try to be a little bit more grounded. But I think the issue is they went way, 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 way too far into the new type stuff. They needed to really dial that back, because a lot of the fights in this series like just boil down to just sort of hand waving it away by just new type shenanigans, essentially. So it feels like there's no real strategy to any of the fights. A lot of it just comes down to whose like new type reflexes are faster. And a lot of the characters just having the new type conversations, like talking to each other in their heads. And that's what happens with a lot of the fights in the series. So it's just not interesting to watch that.
Yeah, honestly, if I were to give it a score, like personally, I would give it a 3.
Yeah,
because it's not. Is it like one?
I'd have to say the same. I hate to say that too, because animation wise, like it's actually fairly decent. It has decent music. There's nothing wrong on that front. Like in terms of presentation, it's not bad. Like I mentioned before, like the art style, it's a little bit different. Like it takes a little bit a while to get used to, but that's not bad either. I don't really have a problem with any of that. The main problem is just in the writing, which everything to do with the characters, the world building, and also just the way the fights in this are presented, and how they just don't. A lot of it just doesn't feel like Gundam, even though it is called Gundam. It just doesn't feel like a Gundam series.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that it's too short. We don't get a lot of development with a lot of the main cast. It's just there's not a lot of cohesion of like over their friendship. Like Shuichi goes missing, for half the show, until he shows up again, like literally by the end. And of course, like, the resolution just seems like out of nowhere. It doesn't really give us the full explanation of like what happens in the aftermath, or what's going to happen with Neon and Machu. Considering the fact that Machu still confirms that she's still like a wanted criminal, for various reasons. But yeah, it's. Honestly, I was really hoping for the show to be a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's the only reason why I got hooked into this show was because it took place in the Universe arc. An alternate version of the Universe arc, which had an interesting premise with Star taking the RX-78 for himself, which led to him like giving Zeon the victory in the 1-year war. But then it's just afterwards, it just kind of fell apart afterwards.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but I hope that that we don't get anything else from GQuuuuuuX, because I mean, the ending's a little bit like, it's not that conclusive. It leaves things a little bit open ended. But I hope that I honestly just hope they don't go back to it, because it's just such a mess. It's just like the foundation for it's just, I don't know what else you could do with it at this point.
I don't know. It's like, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine if they were going to go back and fix some of the mistakes they did. Yeah. But it's already too little.
Yeah, well, I guess the only thing they could do. But yeah, like you said, nobody's going to care at this point, because the main series is just a complete mess. There's not much they can really do to fix it now. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say about this series. I mean, it like you said, I was kind of drawn in by its premise. It had an interesting premise. I liked that it was an alternate timeline. But as soon as I heard that it was only going to be 12 episodes, that's when I really started to worry, and especially with the way things were going. Like I feel like the point is where this just really started getting bad was like right after they introduced the Rose of Sharon and they introduced Lala. Like right after that episode is when things they hit the accelerator and they did not stop, and they just did not care about like explaining anything. They're just like we got to go. We don't have time to explain any of this. We got to keep going.
Yeah, it's just the second half just really, you know, it's like, it's like shit really hit the fan by the second half of the show. Like it did get interesting of where the plot was going, but then just the whole
it got too ridiculous. It got way too much into the new type stuff and especially the multiverse stuff. It started to just it became just complete nonsense, really.
Yeah, and of course, like Char's reappearance out of nowhere is another issue that I had. I mean, they would have they would have explained it a little bit better, like how he suddenly just reappeared after like literally disappearing at the end of the war. But then like they just had him like supposedly he was disguised as like as a Xeon researcher, right under our noses, and then like he just reappears, thanks to Cassilia of all people figuring this out.
I just thought of something else too. Wouldn't Char also be a wanted criminal for having killed Cassilia?
It's I mean, unless nobody knows about that.
Yeah.
Unless Shalia manipulated the events of like what happened.
Maybe.
But there's just like, I mean, you could. I mean, to be fair, you could say like the whole thing with Cassilia's rebellion, killing Garen and then
well, I guess they could spin it as the Char was trying to snuff out a rebellious like a rebellious Xeon figure or something.
I mean, well, of course they don't really explain that.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we're having to like kind of explain things that the writers didn't bother to explain. So,
yeah. So, yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean that's about it. I mean, there's nothing else I can really even talk about with how this show went. I mean, I expected this show to be much better than what we just got. I mean, I expected it to be longer. I was hoping that they would have a much better explanation as to like what this whole multiverse theory stuff is. Like I honestly thought that this would be more of a follow-up to the original series too, because of because of what happened to both Char and Amuro, but then they just decided not to follow up on that altogether. So that's another
and then
thing.
Of course so many of those characters from the original Universal Century shows, like, and especially just the main series, like we don't really get any of them, which a lot of people were hoping for. Of course, they didn't have any time to introduce any of those characters, aside from that the dude from the Titans and the Psycho Gundam. But that's the only real that's the only real references we get to anything from like the original series or Zeta. Yeah, of course none of the original cast really factors into what's happening in the series. But I guess that's all we really have to say about the series, guys. It unfortunately ended up being really disappointing, and I guess we can only hope that the next Gundam project will be better than this, and at least given a lot more time to to develop like the plot and the characters, and not rushed like this was. I mean, Witch from Mercury was also rushed, but I mean this was way worse than that, because Witch from Mercury at least got a full season. This just got this is actually worse, which is kind of surprising, because that's one of the major problems with Witch from Mercury is how rushed it is. But this is somehow even more rushed than that. So yeah, hopefully the next new series from Gundam that's that is like original and in a new timeline, or is trying to tell an original story, is given a lot more time to actually, like I said, develop the plot and the characters. That's, I guess that's all we can hope for. But yeah, guys, that all being said, until next time, we will see you all later.